Yo, 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 what's up, y'all? What's up, everybody? It's your boy Big Mike with Swish for real. How y'all living? I got my co-host with me, Boogie Bob and Wild Dog. Bob, what's going on with you, man? How's life treating you, my guy?
I've been catching up on home projects, and this week cut down two huge branches, and then trimmed the limbs off. So I got in pretty good workout, wore myself out, and got it done by myself. So that for what I've been through the last 2 years, Wild Dog will know, and you've seen it too. But that's quite an accomplishment to be able to get back to that kind of physical activity level.
Thanks. And he is trying to be a lumberjack, ladies and gentlemen. So just root him on. He got the muscles building. So we with you, man. So salute to you. Hey, there you go. Oh, my guy, wild dog, man. How was your week, man? How things going on your side of the planet, guy?
Hey, you know me, just trying to be a good dog, stay out of trouble, do my best to stay on top of my business, and get a little help as much as I can. A little bit of help here and there, and so I'm good, and still enjoying this weather. It hasn't gotten too hot for me yet, but when it hits the triple digits, count me out.
This is Texas, and we're supposed to have a lot of rain next week, man. So hopefully it doesn't get too bad. And they're talking about upwards from 80% down to about 30%. So this is Texas. So if you don't like the weather, just give it a few days. You'll love it then. Anywho, speaking about changes, the Knicks and the Pacers have been changing blows, man, back to back. They've been really fighting, and they're playing tonight. And this episode has been recorded on Friday, May 23rd. So if you catch it later, then you'll know we haven't seen the game yet. And it's about 6:30 now. But the Knicks, man, that rivalry, especially when we look at it when Indiana had Rick Smiths and Reggie Miller. Now you got Bronson versus Halliburton.
Yeah.
The rivalry has been something crazy. And we're going to start with you, Aldar. What are your thoughts on the Knicks and Indiana rivalry, man? It's been such a. And what can you compare it to if you wanted to compare it to any other rivalry in the NBA?
Ooh-wee. Because man, I'm a child of the '70s. I was coming up in the '70s, and woo wee, it's deep rooted in the playoffs. So I mean, I would say, I don't want to start nothing, but I would say it rivals, like right next to, you know, the Bulls Pistons.
Mm.
Most people, because of MJ, gonna be like, oh, they're gonna put that at the top, and the Jordan rules and blah 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 and this and that. But man, you want to talk about some gritty, grindy, physical, and in your face. And when I think about the Knicks and all of those rivalries, even going into the '90s, man, I dreaded him, but John Starks was like, you know, trash talking instigator, but his little butt could definitely back it up on the
Yeah.
and being physical. So Ewing is a man and the head enforces, but man, it always just surprised me that a point guard could. I know John Stockton has his reputation, but man, Starks was something else. you know, Starks was something else. So that's the closest comparison when I think about rivalries like that. Knicks and Pacers, I immediately shift to, the Bad Boys and Eric Jordan, the Bulls.
Bad boys, what you going to do?
What you gonna do when they come for you?
So, do you think the current rivalry is similar to the '90s rivalry with the Reggie Miller era versus the Bronson and Halliburton era?
It very well could be because of the way these already with the epic losses, that's emotional damage, man. You know,
Mm.
so the rivalries kicked right up. You know what I'm saying? It's all flesh right up, and it's like, well, the Pacers got it, but when you're dealing with the rivalry, you know, it's losses like this and it's wins like this that dredge up the old history, and then it all begins anew all over. So it's already started, with the especially with the epic first game, the way that went down, that just dredged everything up, and it's good for basketball. And win or lose, it's good for the Pacers and the Knicks.
Boogie Bob. I mean, I know you watched that game where Halliburton did the iconic Reggie Miller.
Great segue, because that was what I'm going to start off with.
Your thoughts on it, man? The rivalry itself.
So I got some facts for you, and some. They've only played 7 times in the playoffs, but Reggie Miller and Spike Lee kind of had this tit for tat, and that's where they choke, symbol came out, and so the Pacers, for those that watch a lot, they eliminated the Knicks last year. Now the Knicks were hurt, but still the Pacers kept the Knicks from going to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So when Halliburton did that, he thought he'd made a 3-pointer, but his toe was on the line and it was a 2-pointer. So it could have easily backfired. But that was an in-your-face Spike Lee ode to Reggie Miller. But as far as the Knicks and Pacers, it kind of I know Wild didn't want to say this, but it kind of reminded me of the Malice in the Palace. With Indiana and Detroit. The old, if you played pickup ball, it was like no blood, no foul. Well, the Malice in the Palace, there was all kinds of blood, and yet, I think Ron Artest at the time, World Be Free, got suspended the most games. But they actually, as far as the Eastern Conference matchup, it's been 25 years since they've played in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that was 2000.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you a little bit of history and a little bit of facts. Rick Brunson was on that 2000 Knicks team. Rick Brunson, the father of
Jalen.
Pedigree matters. Pedigree matters.
Van Gundy was the coach. The assistant, one of his assistant coaches was Tom Thibodeau.
Oh, wow.
Tom Thibodeau, coach, Knicks. Leading scorer, Patrick Ewing was on that Knicks team. Allen Houston was the leading scorer, followed by Latrell Sprewell, then Ewing. That's just the Knicks side. On the Pacers side, the coach, drum roll please, Larry Bird. Larry Bird was the coach of the Pacers team.
Larry Legend.
Let me just read you who was on that Pacers team that went on to lose to the Lakers in the beginning of their three-peat.
Yep.
Reggie Miller.
Yep.
Mark Jackson.
Yep.
Chris Mullin.
Yep.
Sam Perkins.
Big Perk.
Jalen Rose.
What? I forgot. He was like a rookie. What was his? He was like third year.
Second year.
Because he was young.
Yeah.
Rick Smith, as you mentioned, Al Harrington.
Oh,
and a guy that played for the 2006 or 7, I think it may have 2007 Mavericks team, Austin Crozier.
Crozier.
So they had 2 players in their second year and 2 rookies that became known starters. That was the Indiana team that knocked out. And most people know as Mark Jackson for hand down, man down. And some of them know him as the Warriors coach before Steve Kerr, and he got the Warriors to play defense. But
Yeah.
If you go way back,
Way back.
Mark Jackson was one heck of a point guard and
He
a very
was,
good
especially for
defensive.
Indiana.
He played for Indiana that year.
Yeah.
He was he led the league several times in assists, but he was the Eastern Conference version of Gary the Glove Payton. So I mean, you knocked out a Knicks team that had Ewing, Sprewell, and Allen Houston. Come on now. And Rick Brunson was on that team.
So, do you think that the Knicks will recover tonight in regards to that loss they had against Indiana? And they were playing in New York when Indiana beat them the other day.
Oh yeah, they'll come back. So there's something I check out Boogie Bob or Swish for Real. They're linked for both. It was 0, and when behind by 9 points with less than a minute to go, it's actually like 40 some seconds I heard. Behind by 9 points in playoffs, not regular season, in playoffs. It was 0, and on the other side it was 1,100 and some odd.
Yep.
So the Knicks, I think I heard it was 38 seconds and they were down by 9 points. And was it Nebhart? The one of the guards, the bench guards, hit 5 out of 6 3-pointers.
Yeah, he went off.
Bang, 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 bang. Now I happened to witness.
Great.
Yeah, he went as you know that little black animal that's in the caves, crazy. In the I don't remember what year it was. The Mavs were down to the Bulls, the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls, by 10 points with 24 seconds to go. They came back and put it into overtime and won it. So I've seen it happen. I've seen the Mavericks lose a 10-point lead. The year they won 64 games, they played Golden State. Dirk scores 52 points on ridiculous shooting. He shot like 60+% that night. Scores 52 points. They had a 9 or 10-point lead with around 28, 29 seconds to go. And they lose to Jason Richardson, reverse spin dribble, heave, 3-point shot.
Yep. Heartbreaker.
Avery had chose to foul him because they didn't want him to shoot threes, just to shoot free throws, and they would call a timeout. Fouled again, called timeout. Fouled again, called timeout. Then he chose not to foul him on the last one, and they hit a 3 and win by 1 on a night that Dirk scored 52.
52
So
by the big women.
With a 3-point shot, there's no lead safe. I think we talked about it last year. There was more games in the regular season last year where there was a 20-point lead where the team lost. And we've seen some of that in the playoffs. If you think about it, you need 1 possession and 2 stops. That's 9 points if you hit 3 threes. And 3 early threes. So you really only have to 1 turnover and 1 stop, and then boom, that's 9 points, and you got to play till the whistle blows, or as Nelly used to say, with Dick Motta that said it ain't over till the lady sings.
Let me ask you this question, Bob. Do you think for this series 2025 New York versus Indiana, who you have winning this series?
Rick Carlisle, y'all talked about this last week, whether he's a genius or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's a master at calling plays out of timeout.
He's
also the master at creating mismatches. So I don't know if I would call him a genius, but he's definitely up there in the class when it calls the play calling. So I think he might have a surprise. You know, hey, he put JJ Barea in the finals, who hadn't started all year long, as a starter in game 2. So, he might come out with his own or a amoeba defense, or your favorite, the double team 2-3 zone, double team wherever the ball goes.
Yeah.
That this is where them not having Julius Randle hurt him, because didn't Brunson score like 38 and Towns scored like 25 in that game?
Oh, they did their thing. They almost scored like
but
like
OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges didn't chip in.
Yeah. I think what happened with as far as Mikal Bridges, though, he's mainly focused on defense for the most part, and that's his calling card. And speaking of coaches, and Rick Carlisle is a great coach in general. Bob, what are your thoughts on San Antonio kind of letting Popovich go out in the sunlight and and leaving the ranks to the new coach, which will be something unfamiliar since we've known the San Antonio Spurs. Mitch Johnson is the new coach for San Antonio Spurs. Your thoughts on what he can bring to that team for San Antonio, and is it good? I mean, because we know the coaching tree that Popovich has is amazing. Where does Mitch Johnson bring San Antonio? And I know they have, with the second pick for the 2025 draft, they're going to have a great team. Give me your thoughts on what Mitch is going to bring to San Antonio.
Well, you hit on a good. My first thing that I wrote down was they have a bright future. Certainly Johnson coaching under Popovich is going to help. Budenholzer and several, we can go over. There's a posting on Swish for Real. There's a posting on the Popovich coaching tree. So, you can't discount that. They got a lot of young talent. They have back-to-back Rookie of the Year and Wembanyama, who no one
And
ever
Castle.
knew he'd get it, and Stephen Castle, who most people didn't know whether he would get it. So back-to-back year Rookie of the Year. They have a plethora of draft picks. If they decide that there's somebody that will put them over the hump, I think it's probably a year or two early for them to do that. But they got a plethora of draft picks that they can throw at this draft, the next draft, or any player they want to go after, including Giannis if they want.
And that goes to my point too. Well, it's not a point I was making, but Cooper Flag was really expected to go. He wanted to go to San Antonio.
Yeah, I could see him fit, become the fundamental, be like the big fundamental. But you kind of played into what I was going to say. I'll be out there on a limb. We all know the second best player in this draft is Dylan Harper, Ron Harper's son. But don't be surprised if San Antonio takes Ace Bailey.
Yes.
Isn't he a point guard?
He's a small guard, small forward.
So, and I was going to ask you this question too. How long you think they're going to keep Chris Paul? Because Chris Paul is always a stabilizer for a lot of teams, and he kind of brings the point guard position up to.
I think his contract expires this year, if I remember right. I think because he had a player option, and I think it expires this year. So, I mean, Stephen Castle and Vessel and that other young guy, Jeremy Sochi, I think they're pretty good. He was there to kind of help Castle and Vessel and Sochi along. So I don't, they always say draft the best player available, but Harper and Bailey played on the Rutgers team together. So they got Harrison Barnes. So you would have a younger athletic version of a Harrison Barnes. You can bring Barnes off the bench. All the mock drafts have them taking Harper, but that's kind of a duplicate of somebody they already have. So, I mean, he might be able to do, if they do, he might be the Ginobili of the bunch, but they, they need someone. I mean, Wemby's going to block. I mean, he can go from one corner three to the other corner three in 3 steps, you know? So, so we always say passes faster than a dribble, you know, defense can't catch up. Well, that's the one guy I think that rule doesn't apply. He can catch up to a pass in 3 steps and be to the other side. But they definitely need somebody who can rebound. Harrison Barnes isn't that guy. Not necessarily a scorer, but you know, either one of the Thompson brothers, like Houston has, or an Aaron Gordon type that can come in there and get you points when he's left wide open, but can rebound and defend. Uh, I'm hoping the Mavs don't trade him PJ Washington. We don't want to give him another triplet set. So
Yeah, we could talk about the Mavs next week for sure because I have so many things I
I
want to talk about. But I want to ask you, and this will be the last question: what record do you think Mr. Mitch will have, Mitch Johnson, that is, for San Antonio
well
Spurs?
they were what, high 30s this year. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they weren't quite to 40, so I expect them to be probably around 500, maybe 42, 45 wins next year. So if you go back and look at Oklahoma City when they first got SGA, and then the next year got both Jalen Williams, and then the following year got Chet Holmgren, and then the following year got Cason Wallace. Or you look at Houston, you know, that they started. So they're 2 years behind where Houston and Oklahoma City were. So uh, you know, they're going to be in the 40 to 42, 43, somewhere in there wins next year, I think. Uh, I don't think you didn't see a drop off really when Popovich couldn't coach this year. So
Right.
and so I he's going to run some of the same systems. Uh, the thing the thing I think Popovich really excelled at that you may lose is he was excellent at player development. Just look at the Dejounte Murray and, as Wild Dog called it last year, the unsung hero for the Celtics, Derek White.
And
You
Kawhi
know,
Leonard, if you want to add that name in there too. So
and
what?
yeah, so Popovich was really good at developing players. Even if they didn't get a lot of playing time, he still played them a little bit. So if if anything, that might be the one area you see a difference between Johnson and Popovich. But it isn't like Popovich is going anywhere. He's still vice president basketball operations.
Right. And your thoughts, Wild Dog, do you think Mitch Johnson can get these guys into the playoffs? And if so, how many years into his tenure will that happen?
Yeah, I mean, you know, coming off of player development, that was my first look into Miss Johnson was, okay, how is this going to play into player development? Because again, that's been the bread and butter with Pops. You know, since Pops has come to the Spurs, is player development. And so, in looking into Miss Johnson, I was
Hmm.
like, oh, this is a smart man, intelligent man. He went to Stanford, right? And then he was a guard at Stanford, you know, and he's grinded and made his way as an assistant and even an assistant um, uh, on a G League championship team in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So then I just had this flash, not doing a direct comparison, but then I had this flash of Mark Daigneault of the OKC Thunder head coach, right? And his, you know, and his road through being an assistant and then coming up through the G League. So being a very intelligent man coming out of Stanford, being a guard, right? And you know the old saying, if you can't play, you coach. You know, he's earned his stripes coming up, you know, uh, through the G League, which is player development as an assistant. You know, because initially I thought, oh, it's, you know, I'm still kind of, you know, you know, feeling like they missed a boat with Hammond. But she's where
I was going to ask you that question too. Becky
where she
Hammond.
belongs, but I'm like, man, we missed the boat. Y'all missed the boat with Hammond, but it is what it is. And then looking into Mitch Johnson, I feel like he's gonna hold true to that defensive mindset and to really hone in on focus on player development. Now, where that leads them in W's, how long that might take to them to really, get to the second round of the playoffs, something like that. It's really still up in the air. But I still feel the focus is acquiring the best talent available. And then really, for the third year in a row, the focus is getting Rookie of the Year for the third year in a row. Really.
Let me ask you this question then. Do you
solidifying that you've attained and developing the best talent? That's your fruit. Wemby, Rookie of the Year. Castle, Rookie of the Year. They're bearing very good fruit.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think, and this is reference to Bob saying that they'll win at least 42 games, how many games under Mitch Johnson do you think they'll win in 2025-2026 season?
Ooh, with these two early picks, man, they're due. They're really due for a turnover. So, again, I would like to see them at least break even. So that would be about 42, 43 games.
Yeah, what is it, 82 game season? So 41 games.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then with everything going on in the West, you never know. I mean, in the East, you would be in. Traditionally in the East, you could break even. You definitely give me a shot, yourself a shot at making the playoffs. But in the West, this could really be another year of full development and getting their whoever they end up selecting. Was it the number 3 pick?
Number 2. Because the Mavs got number 1 in the same time.
Number 2. My apologies. Number 2 is really helping them, pushing them, and helping them shine and flex with Rookie of the Year. I would look to see them after this year, this coming season, really starting.
Oh, I think he froze. Okay. So
I was just saying that after this another development year and pushing for another Rookie of the Year, that then they would be better in a position to make a real splash in the West. If they were in the East, it'd be a different story, but in the West, then be able to make a splash with the playoffs.
Okay, so my last question on this subject: do you think Mitch will make an upgrade to any position? If so, what position does he need to make an upgrade to?
With a young team like this, they have Chris Paul with leadership. I don't know, Boogie was like with his contract, if he's going to stay or go. That's a delicate situation. But for now, they have very strong, leadership. But again, what I see they're missing is that kind of, they need an enforcer.
So, but if you have an enforcer, what position would that enforcer play?
Marquise Morris.
You got to have a forward, small forward, power forward. It's got to be a forward. So small forward even, or traditionally power forward, but even a small forward even, someone just that vicious tenacity who could hold the players accountable. Like when the chip's on the line, when you ahead or you down, you got to close and even hold the other team accountable. Yes, the referees control the perimeter of how the game goes, right? But your enforcers internally with your team and holding the other team accountable, how things play out as well.
Let me ask you this question, and then we can move on to the next. Kawhi Leonard, would he be a benefit to them if he came back? Because he would be that enforcer in your estimation.
Yeah, he would. Kawhi Leonard's presence, just, even on the sideline, you looking over there to see if he's coming in or not. Kawhi Leonard's presence would definitely, fulfill that and many other roles, But again, the relationships.
You check that pressure in the tire before you put Kawhi on that list to make sure there are no flat tires.
But it's sad that we have to, go to such a veteran that, because these new cats, I don't know, Big Mike, but someone that either is or that can be, called on for that role,
Yeah, I got you. Now,
So,
keeping with the step, I'm
so I
sorry.
have a question, Wild Dog. Detroit was kind of in a similar position last year, and they added THG
Yeah.
and Cade Cunningham and those young folks in Detroit made the turn.
Yeah. And it was even a difference for the Pacers. I mean, we could go on like what's going on with the playoff teams now and the real shift and difference, but that's the difference between the Pacers and the Knicks. I'm not calling the Knicks soft, but we're old school. We know what enforcers are, and we kind of given the definitions before, and even now a little bit additional definition for new schoolers on what an enforcer is. It's that presence, that physical, demanding, mind, body, and spirit presence. That regardless even what the referees are calling, it's like, hey, try that again and see what happens. You know what I mean? And you shut things down, the things you don't like, and then you can make that turn, locking down on defense or making a statement with a proper good foul, to either hold your team in the lead or to lock the other team down and boost the spirit of your team to get over the hump when like you're down by 9 double digits and there's 3 minutes left. Get it done,
Yeah, I agree. Now, Bob, speaking on coaching changes, the Mavs have, in my opinion, I love that they picked up Jason Kidd as their coach. And I think he's done a magnificent job. And he's really having to go through the turmoil of losing Luka and dealing with that. What is his future, Bob, with the Dallas Mavericks? Do you think he'll stay with them for the next 2 to 3 years, or do you think he's basically kind of checking out? But I don't think he is, because he was drafted by them. So I don't know what would be his thought process if he wants to stay with them in lieu of the fact that they did trade one of the superstars of this team last year.
I really only wrote down one thing on this uh, when preparing. I think he's safe for 2 years.
Now, when you say safe, you mean safe by them letting him go or him leaving on his own?
Uh, Both. Uh, you know, right after the trade, they lost an assistant.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that was the guy who was in charge of the physical therapy for them, right? Is that Coach
well,
Casey,
they
right?
fired that guy, but this was a coach from Europe
Yeah.
that Luca was close to,
Yeah.
Ah,
and
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
that was immediate. And they fired the head athletic trainer and physical therapist. Uh, but he also lost another coach after the season. Uh, One of the other teams poached the third. So uh, Rick Carlisle had Terry Stotts and I forget the other assistant coach, but the other two assistant coaches were head coaches in the league before they joined Carlisle's staff. Uh, so there's a lot of openings for head coaches, and Sweeney is getting a lot of looks at because what he's done defensively for the Mavericks. So Jared Dudley, I think, will stay with Kidd, but uh, when you start losing assistant coaches, it's one or two things. You won a championship and they're looking for greener pastures, a higher level, or more money. Or there's, as Wild Dog would say, there's dysfunction in the organization and they've had enough and they leave. So uh, people forget Cuban brought Nico and Kid in at the same time.
Hmm.
So that was a Mark Cuban decision. Well, he's no longer in charge, and they don't even listen to him, even if he does give input. Uh, So I think he's safe for 2 years. His contract runs eerily similar to AD, and if Kyrie extends the same length. And the one thing Kidd had going for him when he took over is he had played for Carlisle, so he knew what the tone of that locker room was when he walked in from day one. And he knew what the locker room needed because he knew what kind of coach Carlisle was. So I think he used that to his advantage the first year, especially with Luka. But all those players except Powell are gone. So, Jason Kidd needs to hang his hat on something. And we all know he is a basketball savant. When you start losing assistant coaches, it's like you got the same window as Nico to win a chip. We're not talking about just get to the playoffs. I think Kidd has to win a chip. Dallas will always love him and they want to keep him forever. But I think he's not on a short leash. There's the same advantages he had when he came in aren't there anymore. So
now, do you think that the organization will keep him long term? And if so, what does Kidd need to be successful?
I don't think they're smart enough to know how to go pick a coach if they had to.
But don't they still have Mark Cuban as like an advisory role?
Yeah, I mean, in name only. And Michael Finley's pretty quiet too, and Dirk's gone off to do his own thing. He's kind of on an island. The one thing I'll give Kidd credit for are two things. Jalen Brunson didn't get to play under Carlisle, but the minute Kidd took over, Brunson got playing time, and so did Josh Green. So, we talked about development in Popovich. I think Kidd realizes that. And the other is how many coaches, but bear in mind, they only won 39 games. So they were 2 games basically under 500. With the litany of injuries that they had, there's other teams that had just as many injury player game losses, but they weren't to the starting lineup. If you look at how many player games lost by starting lineup, the Mavs easily win that. They're top 7 at one time, pretty much. I mean, they basically were rolling a G League team out there for 5-6 weeks. For Kidd to keep the locker room together and to keep those guys fighting, you got to give him credit for that because, there have been a lot of coaches in a lot of different sports that when injuries pop up, the coach gets the blame.
Now, so this goes into my question because I know they're going to have some type of discussion regarding the center position because now they got Kai Jones, they got Daniel Gafford, and they got Lively. So everybody's been rumoring that Lively is going to be the one that's going to be getting the short end of the stick in regards to being traded because Kai Jones' contract will be a little bit more cheaper than what Lively is asking. I mean, not Lively, but Gafford is asking for. Do you think Kidd will keep Gafford with Lively, or will he try to trade somebody out of there to kind of solidify that and continue to solidify that center position?
Well, in his system, I mean, you saw Moses Brown come in and give him productivity. You saw Kai Jones come in and give him productivity. And if you watched a couple of the interviews with Kidd afterwards, and one of them was on a podcast, he's like, I can only coach the players they give me. And he was answering a question of, did he have any input on trades and all that? And he repeated, I only coach the players they give me. So I don't think Kidd's one of the rare coaches. He doesn't want to be involved in personnel decisions. He don't want to be involved in the basketball decisions. He just wants to be in charge of what's going on the court. He is a player first and a coach second still. So that's my take on it.
Now,
he kept his cool. And a lot of those interviews, a lot of coaches would have gone, Belichick on him and said, "We're on to Cincinnati," or Popovich, and he remained pretty cool during all of that.
Yeah, I agree. Wild dog, the future of our beloved Jason Kidd for the Mavericks. What are your thoughts on his future? And if he continues to be the Mavs coach for the next couple of years, what does he need to be successful in regards to player and positions?
All right, big man. I know too much, and I promise to keep my mouth shut. So I've got two things I can talk about, right? First, I'm simply going to paraphrase Nico, right? After the Luka trade, right? And there was a question about the future, this and that. And Nico's response about basically defense wins championships. We're looking to win now. And he looked over at Kid and was like, we're most likely not going to be here.
Mm.
That's what came in the press conference. That's what came out of Nico's mouth, looking at Kid, saying, we're basically not going to be here for that, what you're talking about.
So you think they're going to get rid of Nico before Kidd? And you say you can't divulge your
according to Nico, neither Nico nor Kid is going to be there.
Mm. I remember that. I remember that conversation.
And then I'm glad Boogie went into it. But like I said, players and everything on one hand is so many Chiefs and not enough Indians and hands in the pot trying to stir and add in ingredients when it comes to players. It makes sense for Kid to be like, I'll cook with whatever groceries you give me, right? But the issue is I got to have control of the chefs. I have to have control of that sideline. And if you're letting go or running off for whatever reasons it might be, right, dysfunction or otherwise or whatever happens, you start messing with my chefs in the kitchen cooking, think about it as an iron chef. Kid is like an iron chef. No matter what ingredients, what groceries you give me, I can make a gourmet meal.
So let me ask you this question, though. And this goes back to what I was asking you earlier. What position do you think Kid needs to sew up in order for them to be successful, and if he stays?
I think right now, if guys do what Kid is asking them to do, they'll be just fine.
Yeah. And your thoughts on Brandon Williams, because I really like him.
Yeah, part of that is development.
Yeah.
Going into Brandon Williams. And my estimate, I'm like, why do I want to go out and spend money that we didn't want to spend money on Luka? Why are we going to go out and spend money we don't have or don't want to spend when we have this great opportunity with Brandon Williams? But again, that doesn't go into your win now so-called hyped up philosophy, right? But I'd rather focus on a future with a young cat like Brandon Williams, right? And then you won't have any friction or issues transitioning when Kyrie comes back.
Yeah.
Because Brandon Williams, young cat, he gonna be excited. He gonna be the exact opposite of some other starter, right? When Kyrie is coming back, And we talked the other week about ball handlers. I feel we have enough ball handlers, along with Brandon Williams, to get it done.
What does Cooper Flag bring to the Mavs? And I know he's very defensive minded. Does he fit? And if he does fit, where does PJ Washington? Will PJ be relegated to the bench, or will he be? I don't know what this lineup look like.
Again, PJ has to deliver on his promise. That's between him and Kid. And then when it comes to Cooper Flag, again, he fought with the defensive approach that we're taking, the new vision, with the more defensive mindset, Cooper Flag falls right into that. And then as far as anything else, I'm glad with the new age of basketball, he's positionless. 1 through 4, if you want to get specific, Cooper Flag can play or defend. He's shown where he can bring the ball up the court, or he can go coast to coast in a fast break, right? Or if you want to lock down in half court, he can lock down in half court defense, right? And as soon as he comes to the Mavericks, right, we have a culture of you have to be about your business, take care of your body, get in the gym, and get in the weight room. And you're gonna put some muscle on, and I'm looking forward to see how physical he gets in year 3 or post year 3. Give the man 3 years to come into his full self, put some muscle on, and with the speed and physicality of the game, I'm expecting great things no matter where he lands. But again, positionless 1 through 4.
Now, and we're gonna swing it to you, Biggie Bob. And speaking of Cooper Flag, he's predicted to be drafted number 1 by the Dallas Mavericks. And there's a list we have as far as top 5 players that's going to be drafted in the 2025 draft. In your list, and I know Cooper Flag's probably going to be number 1, give us your top 5 draftees that will be picked in the 2025 draft, because you have Dallas picking 1, San Antonio 2, Philadelphia 3, Charlotte 4, and the Utah Jazz 5, which is crazy because they should have been number 1. But Dallas, San Antonio, Philly, Charlotte, and Utah. Who picks who, and give me your reasonings behind those top 5.
Yeah, that's what you get for tanking. So, and by the way, this is the first time the Mavs have ever moved up.
Yes.
First time.
And the first round pick since, what was that, 1983, Mark Aguirre.
81.
81, yeah.
So this list I'm going to give you is predicated on that there's no trades.
Okay.
Because 1, 2, and 3, when you listen to the scuttlebutt that's not on the internet, you listen to what behind the scenes, there's a lot of jockeying and there's a lot of GMs on the phone trying to maneuver that 1, 2, and 3 pick.
Yeah.
So this list is based on it stays as is. Mavs take Flag. The Spurs take Bailey. The Sixers take Harper. Then Edgecombe, the guard out of Baylor. Then Utah saves Trey Johnson from going to the Wizards. And then the 2 Duke boys, the other 2 Duke boys, Malik and Nipple will be the 6th and 7th. So I have Flag, Bailey, Harper, Edgecombe, and Trey Johnson. And by the way, yours truly and Wild Dog got to see Trey Johnson as a sophomore. And he lit up Case and Wallace, who's now a good defender for OKC. But we watched him score 30 against Case and Wallace as a sophomore when Case and Wallace was a senior. So
and Trey Johnson is actually playing out, well, not any longer, but he's out of the University of Texas.
Yeah, he played locally 2 years at Lake Highlands, and then he went to an academy.
Yes.
No,
I think it was IMG Academy. But the mock drafts have Trey Johnson going to the Wizards, but and they have Utah taking Fears out of Oklahoma. But I see Utah taking Trey Johnson.
Gotcha. Well, dog. We already know where Cooper Flag is going. What are your top 5 in regards to the draft? Because there's some position that could move up and down for it. Some teams might trade their pick and try to get something different, kind of like San Antonio. Because I don't see San Antonio really picking Dylan Harper. I think they're going to trade that pick and get some more picks for future, kind of like what OKC's done in the past. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's going to be any movement, or is it going to kind of stay packed and each team is going to pick where they are already stationed to pick?
Yeah, this year, I think literally it's going to come down to like the last 45 seconds.
Mm.
You know, with some of the willings and dealings and like Boogie Bob was saying, a lot of it is really what's going down, and even you push all the, that's a rumor aside, there's just way too much action and communication going on in this off season than what I've heard in quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's a couple of moves, you got a couple of good relationships, and then things you kind of expect, right, because of that. But man, oh man, it's going to be a lot of, so-and-so picks this player, but then by the time they get to the stage, they're putting on a different team.
Right.
I'm just being honest.
Let's trade hats.
The Spurs did that last year. The Spurs picked a guard and traded him to Minnesota.
Yeah, and so I really at first when I was hearing a knock on Ace Bailey. Oh, his physical, he doesn't measure up as tall as we expected. The man is not a midget, right? But he's also so much faster, right? Why he's a young man, why don't we focus on the positive? He's so much faster than anybody had anticipated. And the surety of his handles are so much better, right, than folks had anticipated. And I believe that's a great deal with why Boogie Bob has him, moving up at least to the second spot, in his draft. And I kind of feel like right now, depending how things play out, it could be weird. I really got number 2 could be Harper or Bailey, depending how negotiations go. So I kind of have 2 people sitting at that spot, because the way the rumblings and talking, the conversations are going, right? But then still, when I come to after them, then the air kind of clears up with Edgecombe still being in that conversation, kind of holding strong there. Like Cooper Flagg is the overall best prospect, but clearly with everything that the Mavs have been through, how much he pans out or not, Cooper Flagg is what Mavs Nation needs, right?
Now, if the Mavs trade that pick, will it be pitchfork and fire?
Oh boy!
Stay tuned, because we did a special episode, Wild Dog and I, and we talked about that very thing.
We cried and had a funeral for Luka, like this would be the whole opposite of that, pitchforks.
We got to have hope, Mike. Mavs fans got to have hope to cheer for next year.
This is just what the Mavs Nation needs, right?
Right.
And then even Mavs marketing and merchandise, the money bag needs this. The spirit of Mavs Nation, Mavs fans for life need this, right? The probability with him coming in under Kidd and his skill set of him being a total bust, I don't really see that. Him being a first team All NBA 5 years in a row, that's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me just be real about it. That's not necessary. Okay? But especially with Kyrie out, I would like our focus to be on Cooper Flagg's development. 80's the man, but I really like it to be about Cooper Flagg's development, and let's land Rookie of the Year. Let real business be real business, real talk be real talk. But then after them, I have Edgecombe. Then let me just be honest, the fan in me, like Boogie Bob told y'all, I got a soft spot for Trey Johnson. Haven't seen him in person and followed him since. I don't want him with the Wizards. I can't have him with the Pelicans. I can't have him with the Nets. And I know he's not going to fall down and land with the Raptors. So I really
And then we have 2 local boys. We have Trey Johnson and Tyrese Maxey playing for the Sixers.
Yeah,
We go back to our roots. We can root for the Sixers too.
My friends, my friends, and my connections in Utah. Please, if Trey Johnson is still up, please draft him, please.
Hey, but Derek Harper has an answer for that.
I'm a giver.
Derek Harper said, "You go to Utah."
I'm not a giver. I'm not a taker. But hey, there's levels to this, and whenever you think it's bad, there's worse. So
Right. So Wild Dog, do you think if Utah does not trade their pick, will that be a good pick for them in regards to who would be better for them as far as, so there's a lot of players out there that they can grab, and what does Utah really need to make them even a playoff bound team for next year? Because I know the point guard position has been an Achilles heel for them for so many years, but what does Utah truly need to be even a contender and just getting into the playoffs?
I mean, to be honest, when it comes to like up there high, like the Hornets and even the Jazz, you're there in the top 5. You need to trade those picks away.
What?
And get some bodies. You need to trade those picks away and get some bodies. Because their contracts and buyouts and whatever is in my opinion is all over the place. There's no real stability. You need to go get some bodies. You need to go get some veteran minimum or near minimum, and you need to get some bodies. You need to get some stability.
Yeah. All right. So I was going to switch it over to the next topic. Boogie Bob, keeping with the subject of having good players on your team, the Golden State Warriors, they've had a legacy of great players in regards to what we're seeing now with this. Well, it was the Splash Brothers, but now I don't even know what you call what Jimmy Butler brings to the team is really great. But what do you call them? They're pretty much not the Splash Brothers, but there's so many great players that came out of this franchise. What are your legacy players if you had to really review and give us your estimate of what was a great franchise, still is, but give us your thoughts on the legacy of the franchise Golden State Warriors.
Well, the Warriors have. If you were going to put Warriors on the Mount Rushmore, you'd have to build 3 Mount Rushmores.
Yeah.
Because I texted both of y'all. I think I listed 8 or 9 players, both old school, new school, current school. Obviously, Stephen Curry and Clay and Draymond are up there. KD played for him for a couple of years. Chris Paul 1 year.
Aaron Davis, you can go on.
You got the Nelly Run DMC crowd with Mitch Richmond and then even Tim Hardaway Sr. played for Golden State.
Yeah.
But and Wilt played for Golden State and was traded to the Sixers.
Leave some meat on the bone.
But I didn't pick any of them. There's not much film on the guy I picked, but he's on every single jersey in the NBA. They call him Rick Logo. They call him Mr. Rick Barry, the logo.
Really?
So I have to go with Rick Barry. I have to go with the logo.
I thought that was the Lakers guy was Rick, the logo.
Well, some people say Jerry West, but they're referring to Rick Barry.
For the longest time, it was considered Rick Barry, and it was like, well, it was back and forth, but for the main part, Rick Barry. But then it was actually leaked by the person that did the artwork that it was Jerry West.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one or the other or both. I think of them both when I look at the logo. So rest in peace.
He was known as the underhand free throw.
Yeah, Rick Barry. And he had 2 great sons. I know you probably got that on your. Yeah.
Oh, I got some stats for you.
Go ahead.
He played in an area of dominant bigs and that's going to come into factor here in a minute. So he played when Wilt was around, Russell was around, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was around.
Mm.
I think Moses might even been around. It was too early for Elijah one. So this is before Magic and Larry Bird entered the league. So he played in an era of dominant big men. Yet he went to the free throw line a lot. So how does a 6'6", 6'7" guard go to the free throw line a lot when bigs are there? You're going to find out in just a few seconds. So here's career stats. 24.8 points a game, 6.7 rebounds a game, and 4.9 assists per game.
So if the audience wants to know how hard it is to score 24 points a game, that in itself, because that's crazy. 24 points a game, averaging
24.8. That's almost 25 a game. There's not that many players in the league that for their career average that. He only played 14 seasons. 12 of those he made the All-Star team.
Mm.
He was Rookie of the Year. 1964, 65.
Wow.
6 times he was All NBA. 5 of those he was the first team. 7 times he got voting shares for MVP. 7 times he led the league in free throws.
Dang.
Not just free throw average, but free throws attempt and free throw percentage. In a league that had dominant big men that would swat a layup out on your face, so you had Spalding written across your forehead. Twice he led the league in scoring. This next one was kind of a surprise to me. He averaged, for his career, he averaged 2 steals per game.
Oh, wow.
For his career. He played from 1965 to 1980. 1980 was his last year.
20 years?
14 seasons.
Well, 1965
one
to
season he didn't play.
1980? Wait, you said
65 to 80. There's one season he didn't play. 67,
65 to 85 or 65 to 80?
To 80.
Oh, got it.
He played in 3 NBA finals. He got 1 chip. They beat the 74-75 Washington Bullets with Wes Unseld.
Wes Unseld was the beast.
And to show you how much pedigree matters, he had 2 sons, Brett and John, who played 14 years in the NBA.
So they both collectively quit at the same time? I mean, like, as far as year-wise?
They are, I think, a year or 2 years apart, but they both played 14 seasons.
Nice.
Brett and John Barry.
Can you imagine having 2 sons? I mean, look at Lamar Ball with his 2 sons in the league. And having those 2 guys, the Brett and John.
They weren't just, make a roster. They were contributing players.
Yeah. And then Brett won the dunk contest, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's when he
I
was
didn't
with
look
the
into all of their history, but I looked into how many years they both played. I mean, they weren't scrubs. I think one of them played on the Bulls. Didn't one of them play for the Spurs even?
That was John. Not Brent Barry, who played for the Spurs. And he won a championship with them as well. Now, do you remember how – and I was going to ask you, do you remember how well the Golden State Warriors dismantled Dallas at the time when we had Dirk? That was like the most disgusting a number 1 versus a number 8 seed.
Yeah, that was on my list. Jason Richardson, Baron Davis, Monte Ellis.
And then a few years after that, didn't we get Monte Ellis?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years later, because Monte Ellis and they drafted Stephen Curry. Curry came off the bench the first year. And the second year, they traded Ellis to Eastern Conference team, and then we got him from the Eastern Conference. I liked Monte. he would fit with this current team. So, yeah,
Now,
that era, Jason Richardson, Baron Davis, and Monte Ellis, that they had a bunch of 6'7" guys that could all shoot.
now, I know you said it would take 3 Mount Rushmores to put all the ones that you want on there, but if you had only had to select 4 guys out of the legacy to represent Golden State as a whole, who would those 4 be?
Well, it's a good thing I saved my Mount Rushmore from last year, and I will tell you who I put on there. Just a second. I had Wilt. I had Wilt, Stephen Curry, Rick Barry, and then I had on the 4th spot, 3 faces. I had the triplets.
Dang, you talking about Run TMC?
Mullins was my favorite player in college, but I had Wilt, Curry, Barry, and TMC as one figure.
So why is not? I don't know if he played enough years to qualify for Mount Rushmore, but Chris Webber, why he's not in that legacy?
That's your guy, so I left him for you.
Yeah, I remember that. Yo, Chris, USC, this salute to you, bro. I'm your number 1 fan. All right, Wild Dog. Golden State Warriors, man. I know they got put out the playoffs this year, and then it was Stephen Curry got hurt this year, but he's part of a legacy when it comes to this I guess we call it the Splash Brothers now. I don't know what they call them now, but what legacy do they hold with you in regards to franchise? And give us your legacy players if you have to choose 4 if you can. But what are your thoughts on that franchise as far as legacy goes?
Oh yeah, with the most recent dynasty, the thing is, even with Clay gone, it's not quite over yet because it's really the Steph Curry era, and then the Splash Brothers are, the huge meat, the middle, the title of the book, but it's not, he's not done yet, and so, and like I said, whenever the Golden State Warriors are healthy, I've learned well and good and eaten enough crow to not count them out, but really, back them and make them my selection, and I'll eat crow for being wrong about them being healthy and winning regardless of what their seed is. So
right.
So again, with Steph going down, that that was a little bit too much, especially with them still trying to work on their chemistry with Jimmy Butler. So so they kind of stumbled and held up, but it's just too much. But as they gel and get even better chemistry, because remember it's just mid-season trade, right? So so going into this next season, I would expect them to do more damage, and but again, with the age and the time, with staying healthy, they're going to be dangerous. And then Boogie, I was like, okay, Boogie's either going to go in on Wilt Chamberlain, or he's going to go in on Gary, and he went in on both. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother, but I was like, hey man, pick one.
It's all good.
Not both. But let me say this, because I've said a lot of things about Wilt over the years, but when we're talking about the Golden State Warriors, or let me just go straight to my black and white days, the Philadelphia Warriors. Okay. So they, this is the OG, NBA team, Philadelphia Warriors, right? And so with everything going on, I think it's appropriate, that I go in on it, because the Philadelphia Warriors had Wilt Chamberlain, by far the most dominant, unstoppable. They were they were creating rules left and right to slow him down,
Facts.
to confine the game. Okay, this is facts, right?
So that year that Wilt played for the Golden State Warriors, it was a little bit past his prime time, wasn't it?
No, he was in from 1959 to 1965. That's what I'm going in on. And his salary, right, was $75K. Think about that for a moment. We got players teetering and like we're 75 million, you know, for the most dominant players. It's like, yeah, he deserves that. You know, that's the market now. Even as much as, you know, we're getting teetering on 80 and then some. So
what would you place? I mean, what are your thoughts on Draymond Green in regards to his legacy? What do you put him? Is he like more? Well, we know he's defensive minded, but is he part of that legacy in regards to just the history of Golden State Warriors? I'm sure he is.
Yeah, I'm going to go into Draymond Green. He's one of my favorites. One of my personal favorite all-time players.
Mm-hmm.
But with Wilt, because the thing we're going on with Luka is between his $75,000 salary and friction between the owner, he got traded from the Philadelphia Warriors, right, to the 76ers in 1965.
Okay.
So the Warriors had moved from Philadelphia to San Francisco, and then in Philadelphia, you had the 76ers. So he basically went from Philadelphia Warriors to San Francisco Warriors, and then back to Philadelphia, but with the 76ers. And that was all about money and friction. So that's what I wanted to bring up and bullet point about Wilt Chamberlain's legacy and how bad trades, awful trades in history happen, right? And then I wanted to give flowers to a man named, I don't want to jack up his name, Paul Arizin, Arizin. This is an OG, you know, Philadelphia Warriors player who led them to their first chip in 1956.
Okay.
And then I'll move on to my man, the enforcer, right? Been heard about him and then watched every bit I could when he was with the Michigan State Spartans. You know, Draymond Green, my man, you know, Mr. Point Forward. And to think he's going to be left off of Mount Rushmore's, you know, but, you know, Charles Barkley is my all-time favorite. And as far as my favorite players, Draymond Green is right up in there, along with the Sheryl Swoops, Sheryl Miller. You know, I have my favorites. It's basketball.
Right.
The gender, even sometimes regardless of age, even regardless of whether you made it to the pros or not, my list is kind of, you know, kings of the hardwood, kings and queens of the hardwood, and kings and queens of the blacktop.
Gotcha.
And sometimes if you're a king or queen of both, that's how you really get in my list. That's really how you get solidified on my personal favorite list.
So with Draymond, Wilt, are those your top two of your four on your Mount Rushmore?
No, again, I want to give Draymond his flower because he's my favorite. But as far as icons like that, I want to start with Paul Arizin, right? And then I want to go to Rick Barry. And then I want to go to, because Rick Barry led them to a championship with the first championship as the San Francisco Warriors. And then I want to go to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson. Why Klay?
The Splash Brothers.
You
cannot think about Warriors, and the next thing out of most people's mouths is Splash Brothers.
But see, you're referencing more of a current value of a player, because if you had to choose between Chris Muller and Klay Thompson, who would you pick?
Again, no disrespect to Chris Mullin, but he was on the Dream Team.
Yeah,
and he's a two-time Hall of Famer, right? but we're talking about a future Hall of Famer. So then it's kind of, for me, that's a wash.
I don't know, man. I like Clay. Don't get me wrong, but
Like Boogie Bob said, that's your guy.
yeah, my
Yeah,
guy is Chris Webber.
by the way, Weber only played for Golden State his rookie year and then late in his career. He played more of his years in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
sad.
for the listeners listening in, the whole draft lottery that we are talking about earlier was 1984 comment when Dick Motta said Houston was tanking to get Elijah on. And so then it became a coin flip between the worst record and the second worst record. But a few years later is they used to call it the Chris Webber rule. The reason you can't trade consecutive first round picks is because of Chris Webber. Because Washington traded, I think it was Washington, they traded 3 consecutive first round picks unprotected to get so that they could draft Chris Webber.
But then they end up getting Juwan Howard, though, right?
I'd have to look it up. I can text it to you, but I just remember there's 3 consecutive first round picks so that the Warriors could take Chris Webber, and then the very next year he goes to Sacramento.
Yeah.
So
now he went to the Bullets first and then Sacramento, wasn't it?
went to Bullets. Yeah.
And then too, Big Mike, if I can close out on that part, right? Because I don't want to leave fans like, what's wrong with Wild Dog? But again, Steph Curry's brothers suffer from being overshadowed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're talking about Seth Curry or Klay Thompson.
Mm.
And I want to clarify that, like, think through your mind or your heart, right? Klay is that good, but he's in the shadow of Steph Curry. And on Mount Rushmore, likely he's still be in the shadow, of Steph Curry, with the direction of the sun. But
Thanks.
I'm going to give the man his flowers and put him up there. And his exit, and then also his exit, from the Warriors was not his choice. His preference, his desire was to stay. And that makes a difference for me. Versus other players who had friction or chose to leave or went for money or other things that go down. Clay's preference was to have his number retire a Warrior and have his number retired.
Yeah, and that's still going to be done for the Golden State Warriors for Clay. Man, it's been a great show, guys. I appreciate you guys chiming in on the topics. It's some things that we talk about, I think the audience really enjoy for the most part, and we've been getting a lot of reviews as far as comments on our videos now, so it's starting to pick up. I appreciate you guys for, as far as the audience goes, for listening and liking the videos and giving us the props that we get. And we try, especially me, I try my best to kind of reply as much as I can and give hearts and likes to all your comments. And thank you guys for your likes and all that stuff. It helps us a lot, so we appreciate you. Boogie Bob, closing out, give the people a little bit about your social media, where they can find you on these social media streets, and let's close out.
Right above my head, right there, Swish for real.
Swish for real, baby. See that? And we're still gonna be giving these T-shirts out. And we just if you make a comment in here and you put a 1, we'll definitely reach back out to you and probably get you a T-shirt for sure. Wild Dog, tell the people where they can find you on these social media streets, man, and give them a little bit of, where they can locate you.
Hey, you can find me on YouTube doing commentary at Wild Dog 357. Again, that's at Wild DOWG 357. So, Big Mike's out there checking out your comments. Please meet us in the comment section. If you're watching, you're listening, click on it. You got some feedback, you got something to say. Don't be quiet. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna check you out, give you a like. And I'm doing my best to actually interact with you, get some feedback, and sometimes even, fill in some gaps where we may not have covered something and it gives some additional information. And then, of course, Boogie Bob brought it up, so I'm going to have a pedigree matters, comment when it comes to the Buzzes.
Yeah. And again, we will give away a T-shirt to whoever gives the best comment, and we'll contact you and mail that T-shirt out to you, man. This is going to be a Swish for Real T-shirt, so we hope to hear from you guys in the comment section. I'm going to give my guys back their weekend. Swish for Real, baby. We are out. Have a great weekend, guys. Peace.
That's it, Prank.